Hello, it's Stephen Bedard, and I want to revisit the Ravi Zacharias controversy. Now, why would I bring that up now? It's been a couple of years. Why would I want to drag his name through the mud once more? Am I just a mean spirited Christian that uh, wants to rub the faces of people who loved him uh, into the dirt again? No, that's not it. The reason I want to talk about Ravi Zacharias and what happened with his abuse and the complete dismantling of his ministry is because there are principles there that continue to affect us. And I have been thinking a lot about this, especially in the light of other things that have happened. There have been other somewhat similar stories that have come to us, revelations of abuse and cover ups and so on. And that should make us look once again at what happened and cause us to reflect deeper upon how we want to move forward as churches, as Christian organizations, and there is still room for conversation in this area. And so I think that we are pretty much agreed, for those who actually believe the evidence, that what Ravi Zacharias did was wrong. He abused women. He abused his spiritual authority, and he did some terrible things that have caused lasting harm to numerous women. And so we are pretty much agreed on that. And I'm not sure that we have to talk anymore about that. But there still is room to talk about how RZIM, the Ravi Zacharias International Ministries, how they responded to the allegations when they first came about. And I think that the evidence is pretty clear cut that certain leaders within RZIM did try to protect Ravi. And first of all, I'll say that having loyalty to a leader is not necessarily a bad thing. And even thinking the best of someone is not necessarily a bad thing. But some of the responses that there were in terms of desire to the first revelation that came about the person he had been texting with, they came down pretty hard on her and tried to destroy her without having done a real investigation as to what was going on. And that was completely unacceptable. Why would they do that? I would hope that these Christian leaders were not people who generally were looking to destroy other people, to destroy their reputations, to just to come at them with both barrels blazing. I think what was going on, I think there's a couple things that were going on, but they saw Ravi Zacharias as someone who was valuable and who needed to be protected at all costs. And I think there's a couple things going on there. One is that Ravi, as the head of RZIM, as the main figure, the figurehead of the organization, needed to be protected, because if he fell, it would be pretty hard for Ravi Zacharias International Ministries to keep going if Ravi Zacharias is demonstrated to be an abuser. So that had to be protected. Also, their funding was on the line. How would they continue to receive donations? They relied a lot on donations. They had not just small donations by many people, but some major donations by some very influential people that was keeping RZIM going. And that would dry up if Ravi Zacharias was demonstrated to be guilty. And so they tried to protect him at all costs. And even as more and more evidence came to light, I think that there is evidence that was covered up, or at least put aside, that they tried to move forward and to find a way in which they could keep going and to keep the reputation that they had, because it was a major organization and needed to. I would hope that there were some there who thought, even if Ravi was guilty, that they thought maybe the ministry of that organization was worth continuing. That was part of it. I would want to give the benefit of the doubt there, but I do not know exactly what was going on. I know that many people in the organization did not know that Ravi was guilty, and it was as more and more people, especially some influential Christian thought leaders, were beginning to give credence to the accusations, that they slowly began to accept it, and there were many people who did take it seriously and actually paid a price for taking it seriously. The reason I bring this up is that this is not a unique example. We have seen within the Southern Baptist Convention that there has been revelations of widespread sexual and other abuse done by pastors. And not only did that abuse take place, but there were those who covered it up. There were influential leaders who saw some of these pastors as very important people who needed to be protected at all costs, and so they allowed either the abuse to continue or for them to avoid the consequences of their abuse, because again, there probably were some who thought that these fellows were of use to the church, even if they maybe are perhaps involved in sexual sin, and probably they saw it only as sexual sin, not as abuse, even though it really was abuse. That even if they were struggling with that, they were still doing good work, both for the church and for fighting the culture war, and so they needed to be protected. And we have seen that kind of protection took place. Now, we have seen some other examples of similar things where some organizations have actually responded in a much better way. L'Arche, which is an organization that works with those with intellectual disabilities. It was partially founded by Jean Vanier, and Jean Vanier was also guilty of sexual sin, and especially sexual abuse, spiritual abuse as well. He used his spiritual authority, as Ravi Zacharias did, in some ways in more insidious ways than what Ravi Zacharias did. And yet L'Arche seems to have responded in a more positive way. It's interesting that RZIM had to completely dissolve, and yet L'Arche continues to be a influential and respected ministry, partially because even though Jean Vanier was influential in the start of it and was one of the founders, they didn't name it after Jean Vanier. It wasn't the Jean Vanier Home for People with Intellectual Disabilities. It was L'Arche. The Ark is it's French for the Ark. And they were able to continue on, but they responded immediately, and they went into the investigation. They launched the investigation. They didn't wait until that was forced upon them. Another example would be the church, the Meeting House, with their Pastor Bruxy Cavey, who was really very much a figurehead for that church. He was one of the most influential pastors in Canada, and the Meeting House is one of the largest churches in Canada. And when it was revealed that he was involved in abuse of at least one woman, and there's been allegations of others, that the Meeting House dealt with it right away. Now, there have been some who have accused them of not being strong enough, not using the word abuse right away. But anyways, he was removed, and they have tried to have transparency in their process, and they have done investigations and have worked towards bringing about some healing. And so we see some organizations that have tried to cover up their leaders who have been responsible for abuse. And we have seen some organizations that have tried to the best of their ability, perhaps not to the full extent that we would wish, but have definitely tried to be transparent and try to move things ahead without trying to protect those who are guilty. And so these are ongoing challenges that we have to wrestle with. What do we do when there are influential Christian leaders who are accused of sexual abuse, spiritual abuse, abuse of authority? What do we do in those cases? Do we see them as the superstars who need to be protected? That they need to be protected because by protecting them, we're protecting our donations, we're protecting our reputation, we're protecting our jobs? Is that what we do? Or do we say, you know what, enough is enough? We do an investigation, we find out what the facts are, and if they are guilty, we remove them. And if that means the organization crumbles, then it means the organization crumbles. And better that than to cover up this abuse and to re-traumatize those who have been traumatized by these abusers. So those are my thoughts. I would love to hear what you think about this. And please visit me at my website, stephenjbedard.com.